The flames licked at the night sky, painting the horizon in hues of orange and red as Nora Owens watched her homestead, the culmination of 3 years of backbreaking work, crumble to ash before her eyes. Her throat was raw from screaming, her hands blistered from futile attempts to save what little she could. By dawn, nothing remained of her small ranch but smoking timbers and the clothes on her back. "Madam, you shouldn't be standing so close." The voice came from behind her, deep and tinged with concern. Nora didn't turn around. "It's all gone." Her voice was hollow, empty as the blackened shell that had once been her home. "The important thing is you made it out alive." The stranger moved to stand beside her, and only then did she look up. He was tall, his features partially hidden beneath the shadow of his Stetson, but she could make out a strong jawline dusted with stubble and eyes that reflected the dying embers of her former life. His clothes were dusty from the trail, marking him as a traveler. "Tucker Miller," he said, extending a calloused hand. "Saw the smoke from the ridge, came as fast as I could." Nora hesitated before taking his hand. "Nora Owens, though I suppose I'm not much of anything now." It was 1874 in Montana Territory, and being a woman alone with nothing was about as precarious a position as one could find themselves in. Nora had come west 3 years prior, following the death of her husband back in Pennsylvania. She'd used their modest savings to stake a claim on a small parcel of land, determined to build something of her own. Now, at 26, she was starting over again with even less than before. "You have somewhere to go, family nearby?" Tucker asked, releasing her hand. Nora shook her head. "No family, not anymore." The tall cowboy surveyed the destruction, his expression grim. "What started it?" "Lightning," Nora replied, remembering the crack of thunder that had jolted her awake, followed by the smell of smoke. "Hit the barn, spread faster than I could believe." Tucker nodded, understanding all too well how quickly disaster could strike in these parts. "I've got a camp set up about a mile east, nothing fancy, but there's hot coffee and food. You're welcome to it while you figure out your next move." Nora wanted to refuse. Pride urged her to stay, to somehow begin rebuilding immediately, but reason prevailed. She had no supplies, no shelter, and night was falling again soon. "Thank you," she said quietly, "just for tonight." Tucker's camp was simple but well organized. A small fire burned in a ring of stones, a coffee pot perched at its edge. His horse, a sturdy bay gelding, was tethered nearby, alongside a packhorse laden with supplies. A bedroll was spread beneath a simple canvas tarp strung between 2 trees. "Been working cattle drives between Montana and Wyoming," he explained as he poured her a cup of strong, black coffee. "Heading to Butte for the winter season." "You're a long way from the main trail," Nora observed, warming her hands around the tin cup. Tucker shrugged. "Prefer the quiet routes." "Less trouble?" As night descended fully, Tucker insisted Nora take his bedroll while he sat by the fire. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flames consuming her home. "Mr. Miller," she finally said into the darkness. "Tucker," he corrected. "Tucker." "What would you do if you lost everything, I mean?" There was a long pause before he answered. "I'd start again. One nail, one board at a time, even if you were alone." "Nobody's ever truly alone out here," Tucker replied. "Not unless they choose to be." Morning brought clarity and determination to Nora. While Tucker prepared a simple breakfast of bacon and hardtack, she made her decision. "I'm going to rebuild," she announced. "I still have my land and my hands." Tucker nodded as if he'd expected nothing less. "It's good land." "Saw it on my way in. Would you?" Nora hesitated, hating to ask for help but seeing no alternative. "I can pay you, once I'm back on my feet, if you could spare a few days to help me get started before you continue on to Butte." Tucker was silent for a moment, considering. "Don't need payment," he finally said. "But I could use a place to winter. Been thinking of settling down for a spell anyway. You'd stay through winter?" "If you'll have me. I'm handy with tools, know my way around livestock." He met her eyes directly. "And I give you my word as a gentleman that your reputation won't suffer for it. I'll build my own shelter, separate from yours. Nora studied him, trying to gauge his character. In her 3 years out west, she'd learned to read men quickly. It was often a matter of survival. There was something steady in Tucker's gaze, something reliable in the way he held himself. All right, she agreed. Partners then, just until spring. They returned to Nora's land that morning. In the harsh light of day, the destruction was even more complete than she'd realized. Not only her small cabin, but the barn, chicken coop, and storage shed were gone. The only structure partially standing was the well house, its stone base blackened but intact. We start with shelter, Tucker said matter-of-factly, already assessing what could be salvaged. Then work outward. That first day set the pattern for those that followed. They rose at dawn, worked until dusk, taking breaks only when absolutely necessary. Tucker proved to be as good as his word, skilled with an axe and saw, knowledgeable about construction, and respectful of Nora's boundaries. For her part, Nora worked alongside him, refusing to be relegated to traditionally feminine tasks. She'd learned to swing a hammer during her first years on the homestead and had no intention of stopping now. "You handle tools better than most men I've known," Tucker observed on their third day, watching as she notched a log with precision. "Necessity," Nora replied, wiping sweat from her brow. "When my husband died, I had 2 choices, learn or fail." "Your husband was a lucky man," Tucker said quietly, then turned back to his own work before she could respond. The nearest town was a day's ride, so Tucker made the journey alone to purchase what supplies they couldn't forage or salvage. He returned with not only building materials but also 2 hens in a makeshift crate. "Start small," he explained, seeing Nora's surprise. "By spring, you'll have eggs and maybe chicks." It was a small gesture, but one that spoke of his belief in her future here. Something warm unfurled in Nora's chest, hope, perhaps, or gratitude. Maybe both. As October gave way to November, the first snow dusted the ground, adding urgency to their work. The cabin was now enclosed with a solid roof overhead, though the interior remained sparse. Tucker had constructed a lean-to against the south wall where he slept, true to his promise of propriety. They celebrated Thanksgiving with a rabbit stew and the last of the preserved berries Tucker had traded for in town. Sitting across from him at the rough-hewn table he'd crafted, Nora realized with a start that she felt content for the first time since the fire. Perhaps even before. "I've been thinking," Tucker said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Come spring, this place could support a small herd. Nothing fancy, just enough to get you started in cattle." "You sound like you're planning my future," Nora observed, though there was no accusation in her tone. Tucker looked down at his bowl. "Force of habit, been on my own a long time." "Where's home for you, Tucker? Originally, I mean." He was quiet so long she thought he might not answer. "Texas initially, then nowhere in particular. My father ran cattle, taught me the trade. When he died, I took to the trails, been moving ever since." "What about family? A wife waiting somewhere?" Tucker shook his head. "No wife. No prospects until recently." His eyes met hers briefly before returning to his stew. Nora felt her cheeks warm and changed the subject. "Will you tell me about cattle ranching? If I'm to start a herd, I should know what I'm doing." Tucker's expression relaxed as he began explaining the basics of cattle management. By the time they'd finished their meal, Nora had a notebook filled with information and a new respect for Tucker's knowledge. As winter settled in earnest over the valley, their days developed a rhythm. Mornings were spent on necessary chores, tending the small woodpile, caring for the horses and chickens, making repairs as needed. Afternoons, when the light was better, were for indoor projects, furniture making, sewing curtains from fabric Tucker had brought from town, planning for spring plantings. Evenings were Nora's favorite time. They would sit by the fireplace Tucker had painstakingly rebuilt, reading from the few books they owned or simply talking. Tucker proved to be a good listener, genuinely interested in Nora's stories of her childhood in Pennsylvania and her brief marriage. "He was a good man," Nora said one night, speaking of her late husband. Kind, but we married young more out of convenience than passion. His parents and mine were neighbors, and it seemed the natural course. Did you love him? Tucker asked, his voice soft in the firelit room. Nora considered the question honestly. In my way, yes, but not the way stories tell of love. We were companions, partners. There was affection, but not passion, Tucker supplied when she faltered. Yes. Nora looked up to find his gaze on her, intense yet gentle. Have you ever been in love, Tucker? A log shifted in the fireplace, sending sparks upward. Once. Or at least I thought I was. I was barely 20. She was the daughter of a rancher my father did business with, beautiful, spirited. His mouth twisted in a wry smile. Also interested in my father's money more than me, as it turned out. I'm sorry, Nora said softly. Tucker shrugged. It was a long time ago, taught me to be careful with my heart. Is that why you keep moving? To avoid getting attached, maybe at first, he admitted. Now I'm not so sure that's wise. The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken words. Nora stood abruptly, moving to bank the fire for the night. It's getting late. Tucker rose as well, respecting her need for distance. Good night, Nora. Good night, Tucker. Christmas approached, bringing with it a week of heavy snowfall that kept them largely confined to the cabin. On Christmas Eve, Tucker disappeared to his lean-to after dinner, returning with a small package wrapped in brown paper. It isn't much, he said, placing it on the table before her. Nora unwrapped it carefully to reveal a hand-carved wooden box with a hinged lid. The surface was etched with delicate wildflowers, the same varieties that had grown behind her original cabin. Tucker, it's beautiful, she whispered, running her fingers over the intricate design. Noticed you keeping those flowers in a jar last summer, he explained, looking pleased at her reaction. Thought you might like a place to keep special things. Nora blinked back unexpected tears. I have something for you too, she said, retrieving a wrapped bundle from her trunk. Tucker's hands were gentle as he unwrapped the woolen scarf she had knitted in secret during the long evenings, using yarn unraveled from an old shawl that had survived the fire. You made this? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Nora nodded. I've seen you rubbing your neck in the cold. Thought it might help. Tucker wrapped the scarf around his neck, his eyes never leaving hers. Thank you, Nora. They sat together late into the night, closer than they'd allowed themselves before. When Tucker finally rose to retire to his lean-to, Nora caught his hand. Stay, she said simply. It's too cold out there tonight. Tucker studied her face, searching for certainty. Nora, I don't want you to feel I know my own mind, Tucker Miller, she interrupted. And I'm not offering anything improper, just the warmth of the cabin instead of that drafty lean-to. It's Christmas, after all. Tucker's smile was slow but genuine. Well, when you put it that way. He slept on a pallet by the fire that night, and though they maintained propriety, something had shifted between them. An acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing steadily since that first day among the ashes. January brought brutal cold and a devastating blizzard that lasted 3 days. When it finally subsided, they emerged to find 2 of their precious chickens dead, despite their best efforts to keep the small coop warm. Nora wept, not just for the lost animals but from the accumulated stress of the past months. Tucker held her as she cried, his arms strong around her. We'll get through this, he promised. Together. February brought a Chinook wind and unexpected visitors. Sheriff Caldwell from the nearest town arrived with 2 men Nora didn't recognize, looking grave. Miss Owens, the sheriff greeted her, tipping his hat. Sorry to intrude. Need to speak with you about the fire that claimed your property. Tucker stepped protectively to Nora's side. What about it? The sheriff's gaze shifted to Tucker, assessing. And you are? Tucker Miller, I've been helping Miss Owens rebuild. The sheriff nodded slowly. Well, Mr. Miller, Miss Owens, we have reason to believe the fire wasn't caused by lightning as presumed. Man in custody says he was paid to set it. Nora felt the blood drain from her face. What? Why would anyone? Land disputes in these parts are common, madam, one of the other men said. He introduced himself as Agent Parker from the Territorial Land Office. Your claim sits on what some believe to be valuable grazing territory. Man we caught claims he was hired by Edmund Rothschild. Tucker's expression darkened. Rothschild has been buying up land all through the territory, forcing out small holders. Nora felt her knees weaken. Tucker's arm came around her waist, steadying her. We'll need statements from both of you, Sheriff Caldwell continued. And Miss Owens, you may be called to testify when Rothschild is brought to trial. She'll do whatever's needed, Tucker assured them. But not today, she's had enough shocks. The men didn't stay long after that, promising to return when the weather improved. When they'd gone, Nora sank into a chair, trying to process this new information. Someone deliberately destroyed my home, she said, her voice barely audible. Everything I worked for. Tucker knelt before her, taking her hands in his, and failed to break you, he reminded her. Look around, Nora, you're still here. We've rebuilt better than before. Nora looked into his earnest face, seeing the truth of his words reflected in his eyes. We, she repeated, not just me. Partners, Tucker said, echoing their agreement from months ago, for as long as you'll have me. In that moment, with her hands in his and their rebuilt home around them, Nora made a decision. Tucker Miller, are you asking to court me properly? A slow smile spread across his face. I believe I am, Miss Owens, if you're amenable. I'm amenable, Nora replied, a matching smile forming. More than amenable. March brought the first signs of spring and Tucker's increasingly frequent trips to town. He was secretive about these journeys, returning with mysterious supplies he refused to let Nora inspect. Patience, he would say when she questioned him. All will be revealed in time. The revelation came on the first truly warm day of spring. Tucker asked Nora to accompany him on a ride, leading her to a clearing about a quarter-mile from their cabin. There, to her astonishment, stood the frame of a new barn, larger and sturdier than her original had been. Tucker, she gasped, dismounting to inspect the construction. When did you do all this? Bit by bit, he admitted, looking pleased by her reaction. Got some help from neighbors when you were busy with the garden planning. Nora turned in a slow circle, taking in the scope of the project. But why keep it a secret? Tucker removed his hat, turning it in his hands, a gesture she now recognized as nervousness. Because it's not just a barn, Nora, it's a promise. He stepped closer, taking her hand in his. When I found you that night, watching your life burn away, I saw something in you that matched something in me. A loneliness, yes, but also a strength. These months together, rebuilding not just your homestead but a life our life, have been the happiest I've known. Nora's heart raced as Tucker continued, his voice growing more confident with each word. I'm not a wealthy man. I can't offer you grand houses or fine clothes. But I can offer you this, my hands to build alongside yours, my heart to love you through whatever comes, and my solemn vow to never leave you to face fire or storm alone. He knelt then, still holding her hand. Nora Owens, will you marry me? Make this partnership permanent. Tears blurred Nora's vision as joy expanded in her chest. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, Tucker Miller, I will marry you. Tucker's smile was radiant as he rose to his feet, pulling her into an embrace. When their lips met, it was like coming home, a feeling of rightness, of belonging that neither had experienced before. They married 2 weeks later in the small church in town, with Sheriff Caldwell and his wife as witnesses. The same day, Tucker officially added his name to Nora's land claim, making them equal partners in law as well as life. Spring blossomed into summer, and with it came the fulfillment of Tucker's plans. The small herd he'd arranged to purchase just 6 cows, and a bull arrived in early June, the beginning of what would become the Miller Owens Ranch. By July, the vegetable garden was thriving. The new barn housed not only their original horses but 2 new draft horses for farm work, and the chicken coop boasted a dozen laying hens. Most precious of all was the news Nora shared with Tucker on a warm evening as they sat on the porch of their expanded cabin. I'm with child, she told him, watching his expression transform from surprise to wonder to pure joy. Tucker gathered her into his arms, pressing kisses to her hair, her forehead, her lips. "A child," he repeated in awe. "Our child." They remained on the porch long after sunset, planning and dreaming. Tucker would add a nursery to the cabin before winter. They would plant fruit trees next spring that their child could climb in a few years. They would build a legacy together, brick by brick, seed by seed. "Did you ever imagine this?" Nora asked as they finally prepared for bed. "That night when you saw the fire?" Tucker shook his head, drawing her close. "I only knew I couldn't ride past someone in need. I never dreamed that stopping would give me everything I never knew I wanted." Nora laid her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "From ashes to this," she marveled. "It seems impossible." "Not impossible," Tucker corrected gently. "Just unlikely enough to be miraculous." As summer faded into autumn, their preparations intensified. The trial against Rothschild concluded with a conviction, removing that shadow from their future. Tucker finished the nursery, painting the walls a cheerful yellow that made Nora smile every time she passed the doorway. Together, they put up preserves for winter, repaired fences, and built community connections with neighboring homesteaders. On the one-year anniversary of the fire, they stood together at the spot where Tucker had first found Nora, now unrecognizable as the site of such devastation. Wildflowers grew where ashes had been, and the view beyond showed their thriving ranch a testament to resilience, hard work, and love. "We should mark this day," Tucker suggested. "Not as a reminder of what was lost, but as the beginning of what was found." Nora, her hand resting on her growing belly, nodded in agreement. "A celebration of new beginnings." That evening, they hosted their first gathering in their home. Neighbors from miles around came bearing food and good wishes, filling the cabin with laughter and conversation. As Nora watched Tucker describing their cattle operation to an interested newcomer, his hands animated and his face alight with enthusiasm, her heart swelled with gratitude. From the ashes of her old life, Tucker Miller had helped her build something far more precious than the structures that surrounded them. He had helped her build a future one nail, one board, one day at a time, founded on partnership and deepened by love. When their daughter was born that winter, a strong, healthy child with her father's dark hair and her mother's determined spirit, they named her Phoenix. A symbol of rebirth, of life rising from destruction, of the unexpected blessings that can emerge from even the darkest moments. And as years passed, and their ranch prospered, as Phoenix was joined by siblings and their family expanded, Nora and Tucker never forgot the fire that had brought them together. They kept the wooden box Tucker had carved that first Christmas on their mantle, now filled with mementos of their shared life. It served as a daily reminder that sometimes the most devastating losses can lead to the greatest gains, and that with love and determination, it is always possible to build anew.